Hi, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Podium Picks here on Talking Elite Fitness. We are inside the Working Against Gravity studios. I am Sean Woodland with Tommy Marquez, and today, Tommy, this is going to be a good one because this was hard. This is a loaded field. We're going our Podium Picks for 20th century, so pre-2000, end of 2000, video games. So something both you and I are very passionate about, the video game world. And I think this is going to be a good one. We have not shared our picks with one another, and I feel like we're going to have a good generational span here because as a child of the 80s, child of the 90s, I think we're going to have some different picks, maybe a couple that have to be the same. I don't know. But first, as I mentioned, we are inside the Working Against Gravity studios and super pumped to have them as our presenting sponsor, and they do some great work. If you're someone who is looking to get your nutrition game dialed in, not only, just, hey, here's a plan, but here's a plan that you can stay on for a long time.
And I think that's what really adds the flexible dieting kind of approach that they promote for the most part. And, we've talked at length how, they can work one-on-one with people. They pair you with a nutrition coach that becomes your coach, weekly check-ins, 24/7 communication lines, a ton of data at your fingertips. But one thing I want to talk about today is another area of that they provide certain value to, and that's education. If you go to workingagainstgravity.com, one of the things that they have, first thing that pops up at the top is a flexible dieting crash course. It's a one-time purchase and basically gives you 30 daily lessons to basically teach you the ins and outs of tracking macros, creating healthy lifestyle habits, and a lot of the foundation for what has helped make WAG the successful online nutrition coach going forward. And there's a variety of things that they do, whether it's that crash course there, working with gyms in particular to help coach coaches on working through nutrition, or the coach crash course as well to help them basically turn nutrition coaching into a profession as well. So there's a variety of educational options that they provide on top of just the nutrition coaching that they do one-on-one. But if you're still interested in that coaching, head on over to workingagainstgravity.com. Like I said, you can sign up to join Team WAG, and you'll get $50 off your first month if you use the code ELITE50 at workingagainstgravity.com. So if you're not just interested in the online coaching, you can also get a ton of education as well to help you live your best life.
Yeah. Really want to thank Working Against Gravity for being our presenting sponsor. Okay, before we get into video games and things that involve high scores, we are including our top Whoop scores on these episodes. And today we're going to look at the top day strain. So single day strain early on here in the month of September. So so high scores here for day strain.
Yeah, we're talking high scores in video games and high scores on the Talking Elite Fitness Whoop group. We're looking at the highest day strain activity for today. So we're talking about one activity that really drove that number up for your day strain. Number one, Craig Johns, 18.6 with running. Sean Francos, 18.4 with running. Andy Sims, functional fitness, 17.8. I want to know what you did there. Carl Wader's getting out in the links, 17.4 with golf. Udi Trujillo, mountain biking, 17.1. I can definitely see how that would drive it up. Liz Dalmas, she's a day strain champ. Activity, 17.1. She hasn't logged it yet, though. Got to let us know. Aaron Badia, functional fitness, 16.7. Daniel Rivera, 16.6 for an activity. Better log that too, buddy. Jeremy Rutan, running, 16.5. And last but certainly not least, Jill Morale, functional fitness, 16.4. So a nice little mix there of running, functional fitness, golf, all sorts of stuff. Mountain biking, impressive. Way to get out there on this Friday, everybody.
Yeah, running will do it, man. That's always when I get my best day strain, is when I start running. Not doing a lot of it now because I got the old bum knee that I got to get taken care of. But yeah, running. Evil. Okay, let's get into the fun stuff. Let's talk Podium Picks now for 20th century video games. So again, this is anything before the year 2000. So, no Xbox One, no PlayStation 4, anything that we're dealing with right now that we're playing. So we're going back, and I think this opens it up now to like coin op, console games. So we still had, I think we had this Nintendo, we had the Sega Genesis back then. We had the Nintendo 64. I think maybe the PlayStation 1 was out prior to, I don't know that for a fact, but I think it was.
Yeah, it was.
And maybe the original Xbox. Okay, so I'm not sure about the results. Okay. You seem really fired up. So I will let you kick things off here.
Okay. So I'm going to say here, that for the most part I stuck to. Yeah, it's actually I'm saying I'm. I think this is maybe our generational gap. Console guy.
Okay.
Yep. Although
I have a mix.
Some honorable mentions made it. Definitely made it from the arcade. So I'm going to start with my spirit of the games.
Okay.
My spirit of the games is the original Tecmo Bowl
on
NES.
That's a great one. I didn't even think of that one, man. It's with the greatest video game athlete of all time, Bo Jackson, right?
Exactly.
Yes.
So
good.
I'm not going to lie. I still played this game on original NES till about 8 or 9 years ago. So every day right out of college, I worked in mental health services in my profession as well. But I also did some moonlighting on the weekend, working on my best friend's family farm, helping out like I did growing up through high school, just working markets on the weekend and stuff like that. And they still had, and they're up in their like little game loft at their house, they still had a regular NES. So we get done from work, 24, 25-year-old, we'd grab lunch on the way home, we'd eat lunch, and we just kind of like want to chill for a little bit because we've been up since 5 a.m. And we'd go upstairs like we were 12 again or 9 again, and we'd start playing rounds of Tecmo Bowl.
Oh man,
and
such a good
game.
Man,
it was so good. I mean, if you're not familiar, it was the original video game console football game.
Now there was a Madden, but Madden was PC, I think, at that time. Like it was on like a computer. I don't think it was on a console yet. But
And it was a side-scrolling game. Every team had 4 plays on offense you could call. San Francisco, the Niners, and Miami Dolphins were the only team that had 3 pass plays that you could call. Usually it was split 2 and 2. But because the Dolphins had Dan Marino and the Niners had the West Coast offense, they got 3 pass plays, which basically made them pretty impossible to cover for the most part. And even though they didn't have names on the athletes, San Francisco was a loaded team because they had Joe Montana, they had Jerry Rice. On defense, they had Ronnie Lott, which if you put a pass up in the air, that guy could track down everything. And so we usually had the rule that there was no Niners. And then from there, you kind of got to pick. So, I mean, I would either be the Raiders, obviously, because I had Bo Jackson and Marcus Allen, and that the 2 running back system, they would crush it. Or I would be the Bears, and that was I think their running back was still Walter Payton, like in quotes. So I would I would usually be the Bears, and you'd have to do the zigzag like tactic to get away, and you see the guys like dive, and the whole time if I broke one with Walter Payton, I'd just be running around going sweetness, sweetness, and it would drive my best friend nuts.
Yes,
and he would usually end up throwing the controller, which would require some like repair afterwards, and then he'd stormed out. I watched my best friend essentially physically assault his younger brother over a game of Tecmo Bowl.
Yeah, one of my best friends growing up broke his hand playing a game of Madden because he hit the ground so hard. Yeah, I was like, oh man, those games end friendships. Like it's legit. It's a threat, man.
Oh man, and to me that had such good replayability, and it tapped into the sports gaming market, truly. And it's just one of those ones that even to this day, it may not be like the top one, but I still like
absolutely
will definitely play.
Great pick.
All right, my dark horse one was originally a top 3 pick, and I had to bump it down.
Okay,
but it's definitely still a dark horse, and it's more apropos because they're doing a re-release right now, coming up on the new console with updated graphics packages. And it's Tony Hawk Pro Skater.
That's not the one I thought you were picking. Okay,
yeah, so it's Tony Hawk Pro Skater 1. The original, and they're doing a re-release of 1 and 2 together.
Okay.
So this was and I think this is a dark horse for me because it was such a surprise commercial success across the board.
I never played it.
Who would have thought a skateboarding game would be so crazy successful and enjoyable? And it really launched like a series of skateboarding games that kind of rebuilt the skateboarding culture, if you will, and repopularized skateboarders as like these celebrities. And the trick combinations were just absurd and not realistic at all, but they didn't care, right? And I think that's what made it amazing. I mean, where else could you perform a nollie shove it to board slide, double kick flip out to manual to 360 flip, backside tail slide out to a like a 360 out nose manual, up a quarter pipe somehow, which I don't think is possible, into a Christ air, which was a completely made up movement that they just added as specials, although that might have been Tony Hawk Pro Skater 2. And then you'd have like this 1,000,000-point trick, and it was just awesome.
I don't even know what you just said right there, but it sounds awesome.
And it was great. And you got to play, and, you know, in later versions as well, and I believe in the first one too, you got to play as your favorite skateboarder. So as a young skateboard kid, I looked up to these guys, and then getting to play with them. My go-to picks were always Bob Burnquist, Andrew Reynolds, Eric Costin. I was a ES America type shoes guy. So those were all guys that fit in that definitely not a Chad Muska guy. Sorry. But and probably one of the biggest things about it is the use of a soundtrack.
Yes. That you know what, I was going to say when you first picked that, I was like, yeah, isn't that known for like a great soundtrack on a video
iconic soundtrack. And they did such a good job of matching a soundtrack to the environment and the lifestyle, so that it just kind of became burned into your brain. Like, you know, the Tony Hawk Pro Skater soundtrack was all punk rock and ska bands. Yeah. And go and look at the first one. You had groups like the Vandals, Suicidal Tendencies,
love them,
Goldfinger,
great,
Primus, the Dead Kennedys, like all these songs that were just like, oh my gosh, like there are people that don't even know those bands, but will recognize the songs from Tony Hawk Pro Skater. So that was a cultural bridge for a lot of people that weren't into skateboarding, but they started to because of Tony Hawk.
Well, that's going to be tough to follow. So I know you're going straight console. I have a good mix here. I think I have console coin up. I have a PC game in there. So, all right, we'll start with the spirit of the game. So my spirit of the games, I think we're going back 40 years for this one. This is Pac-Man.
Ooh.
So Pac-Man is my spirit of the games because this was before video games kind of took off. All we had back then was the Atari 2600, which, you know, if you had one of those growing up, you thought it was the greatest thing ever. Go back and play it now and you realize how dumb those games were. But we were entertained. Yeah. But Pac-Man was the first like mega video game as the golden age of video games was dawning. I mean, it had clothing. It had a song. It had a Saturday morning cartoon. It had sequels. You know, Ms. Pac-Man. I think there's Pac-Man Jr. And then there's been a bunch of other ones now too. There are even like new ones coming out. Yeah, it's like Pac-Man 3D, Pac-Man Pinball. There's Pac-Man everything. And I remember the first lesson I learned in life of, you know, expectations. Happiness is dictated by expectations. Is when Pac-Man was going to come out on the Atari 2600. Like, oh, this is going to be the greatest thing ever. We're going to be a Pac-Man at home on our Ataris. It's going to be awesome. And the game came out, and it was terrible. It was such a disappointment. And I guess they like rushed production on it because they wanted to get it out, I think, in time for the holiday season. And Pac-Man just like never turned. He just faced the same direction the whole time. So it was just not. And the sound was terrible. It was Pac-Man in spirit. But I feel like that was the first time that a video game became more than a video game. It was marketed as like a cultural phenomenon. Again, Saturday morning cartoon, clothes. I remember getting a Pac-Man shirt when I was a kid. I thought it was pretty cool. But yeah, it was the one game where you would go to the arcade and I still remember the first time seeing it in the arcade. There was a place called the Game Room. People from Sacramento, if you're old enough, you'll remember Birdcage Walk. They had they had the place called the Game Room there, and you went in, and I remember there was this crowd of people around this one game, and it was Pac-Man, and people were just pumping quarters into the thing. So, yeah, that's my spirit of the games, because that was the first games. Now they have Fortnite and Call of Duty, all of them. They have product tie-ins everywhere. This is the first one that really had that. So yeah, Pac-Man is my spirit of the game. So now we move on to Dark Horse, and this one like yours, I think changed for me a couple of times. And I had to go with Doom.
Ooh.
And the reason I'm going with that one is because that, to as I recall, there may have been one or two earlier than this, but as I recall, it was the first pure first-person shooter that came out, and it was huge. I remember in college playing it, and it was like, this is the coolest thing ever. Like, you run around and you actually are looking at you have the same point of view as the character, and you had all these cool weapons, and the creatures were pretty scary, and the soundtrack was pretty gnarly.
Like, it was terrifying.
It was pretty, as far as the gore and the scare factor was pretty high for a video game. And I think without the success of Doom, you don't have Call of Duty. You don't have another first-person shooter that I'll mention later. You probably don't have, I'm trying to think of it, Halo. Like, you don't have any of those. Like that, without Doom kind of starting it. I think maybe eventually you get there, but that sort of kick-started the whole first-person shooter phenomenon. And it was also, I think, the first you could play against maybe one other person online. Yeah, but that was it. Like, you just run around and like shoot each other. It was kind of boring, but it was the first sort of, I want to say, multiplayer experience. I could be wrong about that, but it was the first real big one.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's spirit of the games will be Pac-Man, and dark horse is Doom. So now we move on to the podium. And I don't know about you, but this was very difficult for me.
It was very difficult.
Okay.
There were a couple. There was definitely some switching around. Okay, so my number 3, and it is the Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time.
Good one. That's a great game.
So, crazy thing is this, despite being 3rd on my list, this might be, I would say, if you talk to a lot of video game historians, this might be top 10, top 5, maybe for some, the greatest video game of all time because of the implications in terms of the technology and how it has set up. So all of my top 3 are big influences on platform for gamings going forward. And The Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time, the way it pushed the ball forward as far as open world concepts and non-linear storylines, kind of like there was the setting it up where like there is this main storyline you have to follow, and there's a few things you can do, but you're not handcuffed to that. I kind of revolutionized the gaming industry in terms of longer storyline involved games going forward. First off, the storyline was phenomenal. Playing time meddling and all that stuff was great. And the Z targeting element.
Yeah.
So
I vaguely remember, because was that like 98 or 99?
Came out November 12th, 1998.
All right. That's okay.
So I have the dates for all of these came out. So the Z targeting was like this. No one had an idea what it was at the time, but it allowed you to lock on to an opponent while navigating the world and keeping the camera view rotating. And that just blew some people's minds when that first came out. And I mean, whether it was freestyling on the ocarina and just, going wild. I mean, there are songs from that, like, that are burned in my brain forever. Like I think it was left. So the Song of Time, I think, was left arrow, up arrow, right arrow, left arrow, up arrow, right arrow.
Wow, you remember this a lot better than I do.
Dude,
and I played the whole thing.
And I have Navi's voice, like, hey, listen, like, that's what like wakes me up out of bed every morning. Like, and like you said, you spent so much time on the water.
Oh man, I think I may have had to like look up how to beat that. I got so befuddled by
it. And so this is one of the things that I really think that Ocarina of Time did such a great job of, was it allowed you to make mistakes and get into situations where you had no recourse but to fail.
Yes.
It's like, I'm not supposed to be here. How did I get here? I'm not used to this in video games, because usually I'm always given the tools to pass where I'm at. And that's where the open world concept really started to take off. And man, I went through, I watched with my brother, huge video gamer. And I watched him replay through it not too long ago. And it holds up. The graphics or whatever, but like as gameplay goes, it still definitely holds up. And man, it was, the only drawback is that it's so involved that when you get done, you're like, oh, okay, I got to put that away. I got to get away from that for a while.
No, it was a chore.
Yeah.
Great game. Good pick. Yeah, I definitely thought about that one. Didn't make my list, but it's on my honorable mentions. Okay, so third place for me. This game is one of the big reasons I was able to survive my year and a half that I spent in my very first job in television in Kalispell, Montana in 1997, when there was, not a whole lot to do for a 23-year-old kid who's getting his first job out of college, his first real job. And this was and it's still one of my all-time favorites. GoldenEye on Nintendo 64 is just it was, and I mentioned Doom and how that spawned a bunch of things, and I think this was clearly one of them because this came on the heels a couple years after Doom, and it was the first time. What made it so fun is that you could have a 4-player game and you could play against each other. The gameplay itself, the campaign, so to speak, was great. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah,
loved it. They had all kinds of cool like James Bond stuff you can do, and I still remember a lot of the maps and the missions that you had to do. But it was the multiplayer that we spent hours playing because look, there was nothing else to do there for a while for a poor 23-year-old kid who was just getting started out. So it was me, my friend Mike, who's a chiropractor now, and I think he's in Minnesota. This other guy Matt, don't know what happened to him, and then this guy Josh, who was the son of my news director. We would get together, multiple times per week and play this game for hours on end. And, you want to talk about just like intense battles, especially when on the rare occasion where you would play proximity mines.
Oh God.
Oh man, how nerve wracking was that?
If you're listening and you're a young child, cover your ears, but you were basically running around with your backside puckered the whole time. Like you're running around like, especially if you knew like I had to get it over here because I'm about to get trapped.
Yep.
Oh man. And then it goes off and they did this is where like sound design does a great job because they have the heavy breathing. So it's like,
yeah. You would die. But the worst was you would hear that sound that you're like, oh no! And you just like start hauling. This is such a total jerk move. But when we would play in the temple, proximity mines, on the temple, I would stick one on the body armor.
Oh my gosh! And it was the temple was such a dark level too.
It was so because you would make a run for the body armor and you wouldn't even think it. You hear this, and then the guy would blow up, and I'd be like, and they're so pissed. But we had rules. You could not. The only rule. Well, we had 2 rules. The first was you couldn't be odd job because he was small and you couldn't hit him.
Yeah.
The second is that we sort of have a gentleman's agreement that you couldn't shoot someone who was unarmed. So if you just respawned and you didn't have a gun, and I can still hear my friend Mike in the thick Minnesota accent, no gun. So it was. I love the multiplayer aspect of it, and it was again the first time that I'd really played a game. Like now you can get online with 40 people and shoot each other and have a lot of fun. But like you think like Battlefront and Halo has that, and
Call of Duty,
all those games.
Yep.
But it was that was so fun. That game, like I said, was pretty much my social life for a year and a half.
So I'll just keep this going because this is my second pick.
Okay, good.
Is 007 GoldenEye, and first off, so I bought. I remember Christmas of that year. It was either that Christmas or Christmas '98. We got the N64, and we got it was this special edition. We got it for Christmas that came with like the purple crystal handle.
Yeah,
the controller, which also is N64 controller, one of
the
with
best. The trigger in the middle.
Yeah, and the joystick, and then you could. Oh man, amazing. But GoldenEye came with it.
Oh man,
and it was like if that's the game you get to start you're playing
good.
with. It was GoldenEye and it was Diddy Kong Racing were the 2 ones that came with it, which was a great variation of Mario Kart. And we talk about like Doom as the first-person shooter that really made first-person shooters a viable type of game. Well, GoldenEye made first-person shooters on the consoles a viable platform. So kind of like we were... And the thing I think that separated 007 is that Doom didn't have the same level of realism, I think, because the graphics were a little bit further behind. You didn't have the 64-bit console. You're fighting monsters,
right? And
it was a little bit more like Minecrafty as far as and 007, as you shot up guys when you played, they turned red.
Yeah,
and they added a few elements that at the time you're like, oh my god, this is amazing. But I mean, the story mode was great. the replayability with your friends, obviously, all the different game variation modes. If you were just feeling silly and you want slappers only, or
I hated slappers.
Yeah, oh my gosh, it was the
We
worst.
just run around chasing each other all game.
That was the only time you were allowed to be odd job, was in slappers
Yeah, that
only.
makes sense.
Because one, and this is us being, teenagers. If he slapped someone, you slapped him right in the junk. But
which is hilarious.
Exactly. And in the inverse of it is, if you weren't odd job, when you slapped him, you hit him right in the head.
Yeah.
So it was a headshot.
Mm.
So it actually was a disadvantage. Okay. So, golden gun, power weapons.
Power weapons was awesome.
That was the best one, because you had
the RCP 90.
Yeah. The RCP 90.
Rocket launcher, I think.
Yeah. The rocket launcher. You had everything. 007 single-handedly provided me an education on what sort of foreign guns existed, because I'm like, I don't want the Dostal. Like,
dude, the Klob.
How
worthless was that thing?
That thing was awful. But yeah, the levels were the stack, the facility, the bunker, the cradle, the caves, which I hated the caves, because
the facility was the one that was like kind of gray, right? And it had all the walkways and the stairs and the little rooms you could get into.
Yep, it was like science. It was like, I think, did they have innocent bystanders in that one?
No.
Yeah, but and like you had to learn levels, right? Like
they did in the campaign.
Yeah, you did in the campaign. The library, the archives, the bunker. It was great. I spent so many hours playing that with me and my brother, playing that with my friends, playing with my friends and their parents.
Yes.
Like, oh my gosh, that was where, like, the early iterations. Like, now when you think about like going online and playing and having some like snot-nosed kid like trash talking you, and speaking bad about your mother, like that was the groundwork for that was laid in 007, playing like head to head like that. And man, I want to say the first time I stayed up all night and didn't go to sleep was a sleepover playing 007.
Probably.
And our friend's
because time just disappears when you're playing that game.
Our friend's mom walked in like bathrobe or whatever, and was like, "What?" And we all kind of like looked up, just like white as a ghost, because we've just been staring at the screen the whole time.
Eyes all bloodshot. Oh, what? Oh,
she like opened up the blinds, and we're just like we're vampires.
Oh man. Well, yeah, that's it. So that's our tribute to GoldenEye.
Yeah.
What a great game, man. But yeah, like I said, the Klob, you picked that thing up, you're like, oh, and then you had a gun, and people could shoot you, but you really didn't have a gun because that thing sucked.
Yeah.
But when you got like the double weapons, remember you get double?
Yeah, double. I guess dual wield. I think Daniel Craig is easily up there as like best Bond. But as far as like who would I picture James Bond at a baseline to be, is Pierce Brosnan, because of that game, because he's on the front with a silenced PP7, and he's just sitting there at the beginning and the intro scene where he like kicks out and shoots, and then like
and you get like most deadly, or what was the one that you didn't want to get? Like most deadly there was like target practice or something.
Target practice.
There's some great awards. All right, so that's your number 2. All right, so my number 2, and I'm just gonna throw this word at you and see how you react.
Okay.
Boom shakalaka.
Oh yes. Oh man, that was just barely off mine. Oh man.
So NBA Jam, the coin op edition, is my number 2. And this game, man, like I wasn't even a big. I like basketball. And I like I'm not like my main area of fandom, but that game was so fun to play. And I think it was it $1? It was like $1 to play 4 quarters, right? It was like 25 cents per quarter. So, no problem. Throw $1 in there. And the best thing was like you could, just push people down. You had the move where you could, I think it was pass and turbo, and you knock people down.
Yep.
And, you had the ridiculous dunks, like he's on fire. Like you would just launch a 3 from half court and the net would burn. And I mean, I saw an interview with a guy who did the play-by-play for it, and I guess the way that Boom Shakalaka came around, and I'm probably going to get this wrong, but it's the spirit of this is somewhat right. I guess the guy who was in charge of the game overheard him say it in some different situation. He goes, "That's great, used it." He's like, "Yeah, just throw that in there. And so they did Boom Shakalaka. He's on fire. What were some of the other ones? And
oh
it was
gosh,
so good. You had big head mode. We'd always do big head mode. But who was your go-to team?
So I actually back then loved playing as the Supersonics.
Yeah.
So
that was Peyton and Camp, right?
It was Peyton Camp because you always had a third alternate.
Well, that was the tournament one.
Yeah. It was Peyton and Camp. The tournament one ended up you had Detlef Schrempf too.
Okay, yeah.
He's the single reason why international transfer students aren't allowed to play high school sports in the state of Oregon.
Wow.
Do you know that? Fun
did
fact.
not know that. Yeah, my go-to was the Jazz, John Stockton and Karl Malone.
Karl Malone.
Because I had my spot. Like I would turbo up the floor, and then it was like the elbow of the 3-point line closest to the screen, and just 3-pointer in. And then if he missed, Carl's there for the rebound, kick it back out. I just lived and died by the 3-pointer.
That was basically kind of my reaction with Peyton shooting threes, and then Sean Kemp wiping the glass, the Rain Man.
Yes.
I loved Sean Kemp back in the day. I had his original Reebok Rain Man shoes.
Yeah.
And he was an awesome dunker. And dude, there was no better feeling when you hit the he's on fire and you knew you couldn't miss. And then it was just like shove, like, and then just get across half court and
just launch
it.
It didn't matter. And you could goaltend too when you're on fire.
Yeah.
You could go. Yep. I mean, you were invincible.
Oh, man. God mode.
Oh, man. But we had so much fun playing that. And it was cool because you could play 4 players. So you could have 2 guys on the team. And when you played 4-on-4, it just became it was just chaos because you were just trying to knock each other down and you were screaming at each other and laughing and having a great time. But I mean, some of the dunk animations where you like do multiple flips from the free throw line. It's just, what was the other one? Like they were going like, kind of like Jordan-esque, and then
you could dish it off,
dish it off,
or it looked like you would go to dunk it, and then you would like finger roll it, and it would go straight up, and there's like a timing thing to like mess up the defense. And I would love when you do like you're on fire, and you do like the mega dunks.
Yes,
you'd hear the camera flash like as you're doing. Oh,
and the thing was too is like how many times this happened to me multiple times. I was on both sides of this where. There's like 2 seconds or like 1.2 left. You're going, this game ain't over. Like we're down by 2. We're chucking this one up. And it's like you throw it up from your own free throw line. And it would go in,
and it would like
bounce around.
Yep.
Such a great game.
That is a great game.
It was just good times in the arcade. And I spent I haven't calculated the amount of money that I think I spent on that, but. It was a lot. So
it's funny you mentioned that. One time I played that in the arcade game after a baseball game, after it was All-Stars or something. We went to like the pizza parlor. It was like the end of the season game. And I was just playing. I was like playing head to head with people, like back and forth. And I stayed on there for so long. And it got really, really hot with everybody like gathering in to see if they could beat me, that my rubber cleats melted. And when I went to go move, I ripped them off of the floor.
Oh, no.
And like left a little bit of rubber residue or whatever behind.
So you have a little monument to your victory.
Yes, there. Exactly.
Yeah. All right, man. That game, and we had that arcade emulator at HQ, and Charlie Doobie and I ran through it.
Oh, yeah.
Played,
I remember watching that.
We played NBA Jam, and you would have to you would save. It was a cool thing. It would save your record. So if you log back on and entered your birth date and your initials, be like, oh, this is the last team you beat. You haven't beaten this team yet. So you got to run through all the teams. So number 2 for me is NBA Jam. So now we've arrived at the top of the podium. For you, Tommy.
All right. So my number 1. So if you go back, open world concept game, revolutionary. Number 2, GoldenEye as a first-person shooter, revolutionary game. Now, this next one, I don't think it was the first. As far as a console game, it really opened up the multiplayer direct combat, like competition mode. And for me, is the game I have played by far more than any other game, probably in my life, pre-2000s, Super Smash Brothers. The original on N64.
Yep. Everyone loves that game.
Oh my gosh.
Everyone loves Super Smash Brothers.
If nowadays in the pro gaming circuit, there's a handful of like avenues you can go down in the pro gaming circuit. And the fighting game circuit is basically dominated by Super Smash Brothers. The world champions and the best in the world there are superstars in the gaming industry, although there's been some unfortunate news about some of the top guys in that. But this concept was, so Super Smash Bros. Is built off the concept of like all of your favorite guys, let's just pair them off and fight them. So like, Street Fighter was one. You had Marvel versus Capcom in the which is an honorable mention in the arcade, pitting Street Fighter basically versus Marvel. And then you get to Nintendo basically being like, well, why not let's get all of our favorite guys together and start fighting them. So you get the original lineup in the original Super Smash Brothers: Luigi, Ness from Earthbound, Mario, Yoshi, Kirby, DK, Link, Fox, Pikachu, Samus, Captain Falcon, and Jigglypuff, all battling it out, all with their own unique skill set, all with their own style in terms of like how you need to play this character, which has really created the avenue for pro gaming going forward. I mean, every day for basically 2 years. So we got lunchtime off. We could go off campus. There were 2 houses in our group of friends that were close enough to school we could get there right away. I lived close by to school. My friend Michael Kong lived close by to school. And you were either a Kong house member or you were a Marquez house member.
House Marquez.
And we would split at lunch every day, grab our lunch, hustle over, and we would play Super Smash Brothers until it was time to go back to school. Senior year, we took if you were AP student, you got an extra off period, and we always stacked it on our lunch, so we could have an extra long lunch. And we would play Super Smash Brothers in my bedroom until basically we were wheels up, like Fast and the Furious, get back to school. And one day we decided to have the house versus house tournament.
Oh man.
And they came over to my house, and all our friends and our whole friend group got together, and we did all these pairings and matchups and tournaments. And I have so many fond memories of playing this game. And you almost like your identity was the characters that you played. And I was either a Pikachu or a Kirby guy. So I was either really hard to kill or I was super, super fast. And you had always had your guy that was the power player. He was Donkey Kong, the percentage monster. Oh, we lose it.
No, we're good.
I mean, you had the guys that were they had the Jigglypuff players. I can remember to this day, my buddy Francis Twan was a Yoshi player. My buddy Ben Garcia was a Mario player. My buddy Craig was either DK or Captain Falcon. Our buddy Adam Fox was Fox. My buddy Starrett, he was a little bit of a maverick. He would play a Samus or Jigglypuff, even Ness a little bit. He was a really good player. I was Pikachu or Kirby. My buddy Caracholi was a Luigi player.
Oh man!
And the most epic time, it came down basically the deciding game in this tournament. It was like your best and your worst together as a pairing. My buddy Caracholi was the worst in our group, and our buddy Starrett was the best. And Starrett gets knocked. It was like 3 stock. Starrett gets knocked off early, and Caracholi only has 1 left, and they each have each guy has 2 left, and we're like, oh my god, we're gonna lose this. I can't believe we're losing. We're so much better than them. And Luigi had the ting in his back pocket, which was the uppercut up B move. But if you connected anything over like 25%, you're dead. It just sent you off flying. And in like the greatest stroke of video gaming, he proceeds to back to back to back to back, quad ping these guys, wipe out the rest of their stock, and we basically carried him out Rudy style on our shoulders.
I mean, how can you not after that?
It was phenomenal. And it was like one of my most fond memories of us just being total nerds in high school. And it was all like that game. I'm going a little bit long with this, but one time in college, I think it's I'm down visiting my best friend Craig on his senior year in Cal Poly SLO, and we're walking from this massive party that our friends, like some of his friends, threw. We're walking down the street, and we're walking through this apartment complex, and this bottom floor apartment had its door open, and people were hitting, and all of a sudden we hear this like Falcon punch, and we turn, and me and him looked at each other, and we're like, smash. And these 2 guys sitting down playing with a bunch of their friends watching, the entire apartment turns and looks and goes, smash. and it was like us calling out and them like returning the call, inviting in. We walked into this random apartment, sat down, gave these dudes the business. They gave us a couple of beers and we left.
That's awesome. Man,
it was like
This is good. This is going to be, so this is a good segue. Everything you talk about, like, are the exact same experiences that I had with my number one.
All right.
And there may be some people out there who haven't heard of this game.
Ooh.
It's a coin-op game. Came out in the late 80s. And it's called Cyberball.
Oh.
Okay. So this came out in 1988. I think the first edition did. And it was 7-man football with robots. And you had, and I just wanted, like, I love this game so much that I actually own one that is beat up and needs to be restored. Some of it works, but it's currently sitting in my parents' garage and I need to go get it out. And they've been asking me for years to do it. So I'm going to do that soon. So 7-man football, and you had 2 screens. All right. So you could have 2 people on one screen and 2 people on another screen. So you could play 2-on-2, couldn't screen peek. All right. None of that going on.
Yeah.
Like you could NBA, not that you were calling plays in NBA Jam, but you were all looking at the same screen.
Mm-hmm.
So this game, it cost $1.50 to play a whole game because it was 6 periods. All right. And my friends and I got so into this game that I actually did some quick math. Like I'm thinking for 4 years, and it was at Crestview Lanes is a bowling alley right on Manzanita Avenue, right by my house. People who grew up in Sacramento again might remember that. So if I went, I think on average, we were there, I don't know, 2.5 times. I'll say 2.5 times a week for 4 years. All right. So 2.5 times 52. All right. Times 4. Okay. So that's 520 trips. Okay. And if I probably on average played, I don't know, I spent $7 maybe on this at a pop. So let's just times 7. So that's about $3,600 that I spent on this game. And that might be low. So it was, oh man, it was so fun. You could play against a computer. You could play against your friends, and we always played against each other. It was like, we're going to Crestview. Let's go after high school. School would get out. We go, especially on like a minimum day.
Oh,
and
yeah.
Get at noon, going to Crestview. And they had different teams. And what the teams were depended on, where the game was geographically. So in California, we had like the California Crush, and this was the tournament edition. You had the Berlin Thunder. I think you had the London Lightning, the Moscow Machine, and there was one more, and I can't remember what it was. Maybe it was I can't remember. Chicago Enforcers. No, something like that. Anyway, I was always a California Crush because they had a balanced attack. Like you would have a passing team, you had a running team, and we would play all the time, and we would organize tournaments. I remember one weekend we organized a tournament, and local arcades would have tournaments.
Oh,
and I never entered one, but I am confident. Like this is one game that I am really good at. I got really good at this game. I was like one of the best players in our group. My brother and our friend Scott were really good doubles wise. And you want to talk about just like giving people the business. They put the worst video game beat down on 2 guys I've ever seen in my entire life in this game. Because you could come up and they were playing, and these guys came up, hey, you guys want to play? Like, sure, we'll play against you. So you throw in your quarters. And I felt bad for these 2 dudes. Like it was, and I'm not kidding you. I think my brother and Scott put up 100 points on these 2 guys. And it's the same, football scoring, 6 points for a touchdown. Conversion by pass is 1 point. Conversion by run is 2. And they beat the ever-living snot out of these guys. And I was like, I felt bad when they walked away. I went, that must have been one of the most humiliating things that's ever happened to them in their lives. Because it was ugly. And that you could, so what was cool about it is that as you made plays, you got funds, and as your players got knocked around, they would start smoking. So you'd have to pay money to repair them, or they would blow up and fumble. So I would get enough funds. If I could swing it, you have a chance to upgrade your team at halftime, depending on how many funds you have.
Yeah.
So I get this, and I'm giving away all my good strategies here. I'd get the titanium tight end. All right. Which was just as fast as a receiver, but no one ever covered the tight end. And I'd run this one little play. It was like, you just go 6 feet and you'd throw it to him. And it was like gone. That was my secret weapon. The old tight end. You had the power back that could run and throw.
Yeah.
And it was also I think I pulled off the greatest video game comeback in my life playing Joe Sciarra. That was his name, little kid that we played in high school. He was up in the final period, 21 points on me, and I came back and won. And the periods were fast. I had 2 pick sixes and like a long touchdown in the final.
Wow.
And he was so mad. He was like climbing over the game and shaking it and stuff. And I thought we were going to get kicked out. But yeah, so Cyberball was that game in high school, like Smash Brothers for you, where we would be like, let's go. We're either going to Birdcage's game room, we're going to Crestview Lanes, and we're going to play Cyberball all day. And the day that we had the tournament, I think it was a Saturday. And I think we were there, I don't know, we got there like 9 in the morning, which is early on a Saturday for high school kids.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, that was like the middle of the night. And we stayed, I don't know, we were there till like 4 p.m. and we had a bracket in the whole 9 yards and did the thing. But yeah, I'm gonna fish it out of my parents' garage and I'm gonna get it fixed up and we'll probably put it in here someplace. And,
Yes.
and I will introduce you to the game. You're gonna love it because you're a football guy.
Heck yeah.
So all right, well we're running a little short on time, but
Could you imagine if you're one of the poor souls that like, hey, maybe I might go play some cyberball that Saturday when you guys had the tournament.
No.
You walk in, you're like,
nope, sorry, got it. We had like a billion quarters up on the thing, but we would let people in if they showed up. But yeah, what were some now that let's go honorable mentions for you?
Okay, Metal Slug was one arcade.
Okay.
I played a lot of Metal Slug. Street Fighter 2.
Yeah, and
Great
that
one.
and Mortal Kombat I feel just have to be on the list because of the impact they had.
Yeah,
on the
totally.
Yeah.
The Simpsons arcade game.
Oh, that was a good one.
I love
Yeah.
that game. The Battletoads was a game
Okay.
that I played a ton of growing up. The Contra.
Yeah. Oh,
the
yeah.
original secret code
up,
game.
down, down,
Left, right, left, right. A, B, start.
I think. Yeah.
Excite Bike was a fun one.
I was thinking about that one too.
Yeah.
That was a great game.
Double Dragon.
Yeah.
And then this one was just always, it was a novelty thing because I never had it because you needed the power pad, but the track and field one.
Oh yeah.
Where you had to like run and then you could just jump off the pad.
Yep.
And
we
then-
had the arcade version of that, and the secret was you would get a comb because you had to hit two buttons, and you'd put the comb, like you put the one end of the comb on one button, you would just slap the comb on the other one, so you had like a 80s ingenuity right there.
Yeah, it's clever.
Any other ones or?
My dad loved Galaga, so we would play that.
Galaga, yeah.
Galaga, yeah. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles arcade game was always fun.
That was a good one. That was a 4-player one.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had NHL 94.
Mm-hmm.
Great game. Another PC game that was fantastic. Wing Commander. You haven't played that? Flight simulator sci-fi game with a story. Was awesome. Terrible movie. Mario Kart on N64.
Mario
That was
Kart,
the other game that almost tied for third, but I just played GoldenEye more. And then you got to throw Pong in there because Pong was kind of what started it all.
Started the video game.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mario. So it's funny because I didn't play a ton of Mario Kart 64. I played a lot of like Super NES Mario Kart. And then once I played a ton of Double Dash in college, the GameCube version.
Oh, GameCube. Yeah, my brother actually worked on that system.
Oh.
Yeah, and so I'll just give him a shameless plug. If you guys like video games, check out my brother's podcast on video games. It's called the D3 Podcast, Drunk Developer Diaries Podcast. He's a game developer. They get guests on, they drink, and they talk about video games. So
nice.
Yeah, check it out, and you're going to hear a guy that sounds a little bit like me, but has much better stories. So, all right. Well, that was a really fun episode. Again, thanks to WAG for being our presenting sponsor. Be sure to check them out. Go to workingagainstgravity.com, enter the code ELITE50, and you'll get $50 off your first month of nutrition coaching. And then also Whoop, go to whoop.com, and then you can enter the code TALKING15, and you'll save 15%, and you will start to optimize the way that you train. That was a blast.
Yes,
a lot of fun there, man. Whew. Good trip down memory lane. All right. Hope you guys enjoyed that. Let us know what your podium picks are for the 20th century video games. For Tommy Marquez, I'm Sean Woodland, and we will talk to you next time.